Type F in the chat because the amazing digital circus is over. And that's what the creator said. She just said she's tired. And that's really sad because we're going to be left without those resolutions, like for example, what would be the future of the abstractions, what would happen to the other former members of the circus, and also what would happen with the expansion of CA since he keeps testing their AI, the brain rest machine, and putting more people inside the digital circus. This is a really interesting turning point. We're going to discuss exactly that. And I'm also going to explain here some reasons why people are criticizing her and speaking badly about the creator because of this answer. But actually, there's much more. There's a lot more that nobody is talking about. And that's what I'm going to talk about here now. But type F, because up until now, the amazing digital circus is over. Man, when it comes to the amazing digital circus, one of the things we expected was that there would really be a second season. The creator even showed up at public events, and she ended up saying exactly that this wasn't the end of the digital circus, but actually the end of one of the stories. And the story was the one she wanted to tell about Pomini and Jax, about a girl who basically wanted to help everyone, but a guy who didn't want to be helped, which would give like the explanation for him having become an abstraction. This here is a really interesting turning point. Even though Glitch herself also released some clips, those promo clips that end up giving us some information about things that happen within the circus that aren't directly in the episodes. I like it. Diretamente nos episódios. For example, the clip called Kane's Fear. Literally, he's afraid that other players will turn into abstractions, and he basically dreams about Pomini dying, turning into an abstract creature, which makes a lot of sense for the story of the digital circus. So, the digital circus uses abstraction as a metaphor for death, but abstraction is a completely abstract and uncontrollable creature, and it only calms down in the dark. But there's a theory about this. The thing is, many of the ideas simply exist within the digital circus, and the creator doesn't put them in the series. For example, she answered some things here, like Scratch becoming the first abstracted being. Actually, he was trying to fix his head and just wanted to be a little happier, but he ended up going crazy inside the digital circus and lost his mind to the point that they ended up becoming abstracted and suffering a second death while still alive, since her present self ended up dying from a brain tumor. And this here basically doesn't have... I think it's really crazy that she answers these things, because given the situation of the digital circus today, we can already imagine that more stories are already written. The creator herself openly answered a bunch of things that were already planned for the episodes, basically giving future spoilers. Just like these things she says about members who haven't even really appeared in the circus yet, not even in the episodes, but we know they're canonically there because there are doors for each room. We already start to imagine another series that could be created with those characters, or even future stories if she wants to expand. But the only thing stopping her from wanting to continue with the amazing digital circus is basically herself, because if we think about it, Glitch made a ton of money with everything that was done with the digital circus. Not just with merchandise, with the amount of plushies that were released one after another, but also all the promotional material and even the box office from the movie itself, which is already estimated to have made them almost $40 million. And I look at this and I see people commenting like, oh, RK Play, that's so little. It's because we're used to seeing, I don't know, Marvel movies making $1 billion at the box office. But man, Glitch is an indie studio. They don't have access to every distribution company. You know, we have movie studios that make key deals with distributors who make key contracts with several different cinema chains. Like 3 companies working together. And we know that there are a lot of things these companies do together that would actually be unethical for anyone who wants to work with independent cinema. So much so that many films are made and you end up not seeing that. I have a goal to make a film. I was going to make a film. How long will it take? I don't know. But one barrier I would have to face is really the movie theater circuit, which is very difficult. Opening a door for those who don't have one, for example, for those who aren't heirs, for example, and I'm just talking about the box office. Here it also involves the toys. And why am I talking about this? Why? The digital circus ended up making a lot of profit, and the creator earned a pretty considerable percentage from that. So, she wouldn't exactly be in a hurry to continue building this story. Of course, if she decides to take a little longer to produce a sequel or new content for the digital circus, she might end up losing momentum, maybe falling behind in terms of hype content. Why? It took her 9 episodes to be made over 3 years. You have to remember that the first pilot episode took many months, several months before the official release. So you can already imagine that yes, there's a lot more behind the scenes stuff that we don't know about. But the point is, there were nine episodes in total and an expectation of 3 to 4 years for the release. So if we stop to analyze the amazing digital circus, if the creator leaves it inactive for too long, its return won't be that hyped. We saw this with elements of Delta Deltarune, which took so long to release a continuation from one chapter to another that the engagement already dropped. The same thing happens with other games and other animations too, and this is a very important turning point. Sometimes it's good to keep up the frequency so you can keep riding your own hype. Of course, there are problems with extending the hype for too long, with too much frequency. We see, for example, Marvel movies suffering from this. But the digital circus is remarkable for them to start producing. And there's a lot of material that wasn't explained here. For example, I already start here by talking about the opening itself. Although the digital circus is incredible, we saw it as part of the system, which doesn't make sense. Even because, although it seemed like a joke in the first and second episodes, in the final episode, it practically exists as its own NPC. In the amazing digital circus, there's also the issue of the void itself. We know that the CNA company was working on 2 artificial intelligences, and it's not, contrary to what many people believe, it's not a company that's bankrupt or closed. We remember Pomini saying he used to search through a bunch of abandoned buildings, but that's one thing, man. It doesn't mean that CNA was in an abandoned building. She might have even, for example, used a computer there, but it wasn't an abandoned building. Maybe it was a data center. That was hidden behind a fake front to pay less taxes. That happens. Look, even so, Pomini's situation here is really funny because when we start to analyze her story, it makes complete sense here. And at this turning point, we have CNA, which still exists, keeps the server active, and is even paying very well for the internet connection. Since this server is connected to the World Wide Web, look how great that is. So in this case, we can already imagine that the amazing digital circus is being funded by CNA's own research. And I've already told you that too. The members of the digital circus itself, they joined because Kane had access to the page with the files and everything that contained the brain scan data, and the files weren't working. He managed to make those files work all by himself. And in this way, he managed to create a program that basically formed a specific body that matched the personality and memories of those other members. But since the humans were there and they have nothing to do with the digital circus, I'm telling you, there is a theory that they went there because CNA saw that the digital circus was evolving, right? Their AIs had merged. 2 primary AIs. They evolved over the years. So of course they scanned other minds to upload as data into that server and then hand them over to Kame, and with that, make his AI evolve even more. His AI is conscious. The NPCs also evolved. An example of this is the Orb Man, who is an extremely primitive NPC and didn't even have vocal cords to speak. In other words, since he comes from much older adventures, that explains why they were simpler. The AI is evolving. And the other turning point is when Kane, for example, talks to the moon and the moon simply says she loves him, and he realizes he never programmed her to do that. Man, if this wasn't clear, the artificial intelligences and NPCs are evolving in this digital circle. And actually, that's normal. It happens in real life. AIs evolve as you use them. By feeding them more information, more data, they get better. So I'm telling you, you can cry as much as you want, but the story of the digital circle still has a lot more to it. When the creator shows up saying that the circle isn't over, but just finished a story, it's a sign that more things can still happen. Another thing I want to talk to you about is the bubble itself. It stayed silent while the story of the digital circle was happening. She was another part of Kane's consciousness, suggesting that she could have been the figure who saved his life. But we got it. The Bubble's AI was that other blue artificial intelligence, but it was still being fed. Apparently she was much more powerful, but still, she had a kind. Kane was creative and she wasn't, and since he was creative, he had much more power with her and created a body just for himself. Otherwise, she would have a body of her own, an independent one. The thing is, Kane didn't get rid of Bubble completely. In the credits of the Incredible Digital Circus, we end up seeing him putting the Bubble inside a safe with a key, and it's been locked there all this time. Sorry, Bubble didn't die, it's coming back. The thing is, the creator is telling everyone like, well, the incredible digital circus is over, there won't be anything else, okay, it's all finished. Man, when she says that, it's fine. I know the creator is also known for trolling. Remember that she has already released several fake images, like the exit door showing up in episodes 6 and 7, people fighting with each other because of things she said, and she would contradict herself? Yeah, she's like that too, but look, if I say she's tired of the incredible digital circus, it's because she wants to work on other projects, and I totally get that. Here on the channel, you can really see it. I start making videos on a certain topic, my hyper-focus was really on digital circus, but now it's shifting to something else, right? There's going to be Star Fox soon, so this happens to anyone who creates content, and she's gonna go through that too. She made that series that had already been written, I don't know, for over a year, so I wouldn't be surprised if, for example, she finished the project right there. If she answers more about earlier events, it's because more about digital circus was written, but it didn't appear in the episodes since we saw things from the sextet's perspective. But I imagine more things will happen, just not now, but way in the future. She's rich, man, rich. She's rich. And probably, most likely, she won't want to work, she'll take a sabbatical year, who knows, unless she gets the spark to continue the story of the circus. It's very likely that, come on, I've seen this movie before. She'll probably start a new project which could surpass the circus, could be on the same level, or even below. The trailer will even have the slogan, "From the same creator of the incredible digital circus." And then, later, depending on how that project goes, she'll come back with the digital circus, a new arc. I keep this expectation, and I think you should have this hope too. For now, all we have is a bucket of water, seaweed, cold water, because that's what's going to happen for now. It happens, man, you get anxious, but we stay cool, relax, everything's gonna work out.